So today I'm going to give you an overview of all the cities around Virginia Beach and Hampton Roads and tell you the best and worst parts about living in those areas. So by the time you finish watching this video, you'll know which cities you like and don't like, and it will help you determine which specific spots to pick and learn more in depth as you decide where to live in the Virginia Beach area. And we're starting right now. Hey, my name is Sam Sansalone, and I'm a real estate agent in the Hampton Roads area. That goes from the south of Virginia Beach all the way up through Williamsburg, and I do videos every week about living and moving to the area. Sometimes when people plan to live here, they don't know where to start. They don't know where to look initially, and I thought this video would be good to give you an overview of all the cities, the pros and cons, the good and bad, so you can decide for you which one to get more in depth to learn more about as you move forward and decide more about where to live. So we're going to start in no particular order, going all the way through the Hampton Roads area in Virginia Beach through Williamsburg, and we're going to start with Virginia Beach. So Virginia Beach is, it's the biggest, most well-known city in Hampton Roads, and it's the largest population of around 500,000 people, and it's known to be not only in demand for schools, but also the beach. You've got several beaches here. It is the most in-demand spot in the whole area for beaches. It's also the most touristy, which is one of the biggest drawbacks to this area as well. But you have a lot of suburbs. You have a lot of spots for housing, anywhere from townhouses and condos from $200,000-$300,000, going up into $1, $2, $5+ million, going on the water, huge, massive estates. And so you got a mixture of suburbia. Now, suburbia here means lots of neighborhoods and lots of strip malls and restaurants and big box stores. And you get a mixture here of big box and mom and pop. So what you'll find is there's nothing that you're really missing here from the standpoint of living on a day-to-day basis. The drawback, though, is that you got some traffic, a lot of thick traffic in very specific spots. And also, it's a very large land-sized city. So if you live on one side of the city, it can be hard to get to the other side relatively easily. So you have to kind of be specific on where you want to live. And also, again, the tourists are another big reason that people often don't want to be closer to the beach. The big other reason why people aren't a big fan of Virginia Beach is in specific spots, the jet noise is a big deal because the Oceana Naval Air Station is on the eastern side of the city, and it can be pretty loud. I personally don't like it. That's why I'm not in that specific area. But some people don't care at all. So I would say because of that, it's hard to get a good picture as to really how loud it is or isn't for you, because a lot of people here just forget that it's there. So that's another drawback to living in Virginia Beach. So another drawback in Virginia Beach is going to be that it's kind of expensive. It's going to be in the $400,000 to $700,000 range. Generally speaking, the average median sales price is in the low to mid 400s right now. So the next city is next to it, which is Norfolk. Now, Norfolk, Virginia is, compared to Virginia Beach, it's a much older city. The Virginia Beach houses are built mostly anywhere from the 50s all the way through a lot of newer construction. But Norfolk has a lot of older houses built like in the 20s, 30s, 40s. It's just an old city. And so because of that, it's got a mixture of a lot of character on the west side where Ghent is, I'm a huge fan of Ghent. I used to live there. But it also has a lot of just kind of blah parts of town, like 50s houses and old shopping centers that don't really have much character at all. So you have several different distinct parts of town depending on where you are in Norfolk. It's close to the base, the Norfolk Navy base and Little Creek Amphibious Base on the north side. It also has a beach, an ocean view beach on the north side, which is a long beach, but it's just not as well built up yet compared to most Virginia Beach, but it's getting there. But also, again, it has the walkable aspect that you don't get as much in Virginia Beach, which is in Ghent and in around downtown area, the western side of Norfolk, which has more character, more mom and pop shops, that more walkable vibe that really almost isn't replicatable in almost anywhere in Hampton Roads. So that's another benefit. Another drawback, though, again, is that the demand for the schools is not as high here. So people often focus on schools in other areas based on what they see online. So definitely factor that in if you're trying to move to Norfolk. See how the school systems factor into what you want your decision to be. Then going to Chesapeake, I'd say Chesapeake is one of the largest land size cities in the area, but Chesapeake's about half the population of Virginia Beach, for example, and it has a lot of people, but they're more spread out, and so it will feel like Chesapeake is more of a rural part of town. It's got a lot of suburbia, but it's spread out, not as much as Virginia Beach. It also has very in-demand school districts in a lot of places, especially in the south side of Chesapeake. It's also pretty easy to get to places like Norfolk and Virginia Beach and a lot of the eastern and southern parts of the city, though it can feel farther away. So if you're in like the center or the south parts of Chesapeake, in reason, you can get to downtown Norfolk in about 15-20 minutes. You can get to Virginia Beach, the center of it, in 20-ish minutes in a lot of places. But the issue with Chesapeake is, depending on what your preferences are, it can feel very rural because it's a city built like with suburbs in a bunch of rural country land. And so you've got strip malls that, are very handy, grocery stores that are sprinkled all around the city, and a lot of suburban, like residential neighborhoods. But between all of those spots is sometimes a lot of fields, farmland, undeveloped land. And so because of that, it can feel like you're farther away from other parts of town, more of the action, you're just further away from that. So even though you might be 22 minutes away from downtown Norfolk or 16 minutes, it might feel like you're 35 and just kind of feels a little bit more isolated in some spots. So that's one thing that can be a drawback to living in Chesapeake. And there are also some spots that have some issues with flooding, very specific local spots that not the entire city, but just very specific spots that I would just keep in mind. So just don't assume that every area does not require flood insurance. So in Chesapeake, in some of the spots, you're going to find it's going to be almost pricing and housing for Chesapeake is going to be almost comparable to what you find in Virginia Beach. So that can be a drawback too, is it's kind of a surprise higher cost area in Hampton Roads. So that leads me to another city that is just next to that, which is Portsmouth. And Portsmouth you don't hear about too much. And Portsmouth's got one big benefit. It is cheap to live there to buy houses. You can buy a house in Portsmouth, maybe 25-ish% less than you might find in other cities. A house you can get 3-4 bedrooms, $300,000, $350,000, relatively easily. And so that's a benefit. Now the drawback though is you've got tunnel access you have to use to get to Norfolk and Virginia Beach, or even some parts of Chesapeake. You have toll access that requires some parts of that of driving to those parts of town. So Portsmouth is kind of locked in the middle of the Hampton Roads area near Virginia Beach, but it takes a lot longer, or it's more expensive to get out. It also has higher taxes, almost around 30% more, at least in Portsmouth, for real estate compared to other cities in Hampton Roads. And so that's another drawback that you would be kind of surprised. And it's part of why you can find cheaper houses, real estate prices in Portsmouth. Another reason is that it can feel run down. It's not all like this, but it just has like a lack of identity in some spots. So there are parts that look real secluded and nice and relaxed. Some just feel old and kind of run down. But you got Old Town Portsmouth, which is a benefit that is great. It's a nice walkable side of Portsmouth, but at the same time, there are some spots that don't feel that well taken care of. So that leads me over though to Suffolk, which this is one that has lots of different opinions, because Suffolk is the largest land size city in Virginia, the whole state. But with Suffolk, because of all the growth that's happened in Chesapeake and even in all of the South Side, Virginia Beach and Norfolk and all that, the growth has moved over into Suffolk. And so in the last 15, 20 years, you're seeing more newer construction being built in here, more suburban areas, more shopping, more restaurants. It's becoming more of an ecosystem that didn't used to be in the 90s, for example. So you're seeing more new things be built in Suffolk. So it was like, hey, kind of like the way Chesapeake was in the 90s and before, where it was farmland, and then it just became more and more neighborhoods and strip malls and shopping and hospital, medical stuff. It's just becoming its own thing. And because of that, you're going to see newer construction houses, newer styles of houses, but also it's starting to get more expensive because people were moving there before, but when it was cheaper, they can get that pivot, like, well, I'll just go to Suffolk and drive 40 minutes to Virginia Beach, which it can take that long. But now people often will live in Suffolk, and that's where they end up living, doing their whole life. And so the prices for those houses are starting to increase more. So you're going to see newer construction now in the 600, 550, even sometimes low fives range, but mostly 550, 650 and up. But again, it's a little cheaper than Virginia Beach and Chesapeake, but it's getting closer. The margin is narrowing. Again, another drawback is it's farther from the rest of Virginia Beach and Chesapeake and Norfolk. And so it can feel isolating to live in Suffolk if you're not used to driving 30 plus minutes, 40 plus minutes to get to the rest of town. Another thing is that it has a lot of country, and it has a kind of a specific downtown area, but it's also even further away from the rest of the developed area of Suffolk. And so with it being such a large piece of land, it has such a super drawn out feel, and it just feels so separate from the rest of Hampton Roads. So that leaves me going to the north side into Newport News, which, if you've seen where the bodies of water, the Chesapeake Bay, the Lynn Haven roads, the waterways between Virginia Beach and the north side of Hampton Roads, the Newport News is in the strip called the Peninsula on the western side, the left side, if you're looking at the map, in the what's called the Peninsula of Hampton Roads. This is anywhere from urban, kind of an older part of town in the south western part of Newport News, going up into the western side of Newport News, which has a lot of nature, a lot of 50s, 60s style houses that almost feel like a lot of what you see in Virginia Beach. And it's one of the most well-kept secrets of the entire Hampton Roads area to me. You have a spot called Hilton, which is kind of a walkable little spot with small little strip malls, and it's not a big downtown or anything, but it has some smaller walkable feel like Ghent does, but it's a much smaller version. Even some water access points that you can walk, run around, some trails along the western side of Newport News. So I would say if you're looking for a pivot spot that is not as expensive as Virginia Beach but might feel similar to it, check out the western part of Newport News, because it does have some elements to what you might find in Virginia Beach and Chesapeake. Though the drawback is that it just doesn't have a huge identity outside of that western part of the city, and it has a lot of long, main roads that just not a lot of character to it. You've got some shopping, you've got the Costco and a lot of the big box stores along some main roads, but other than that, it's just not really thick with a lot of nuance to it. And so that leads me over, though, to the next neighborhood next door, which is Hampton, which they kind of bookend. They're often thought of together in some spots, but they don't really feel the same to me. Hampton is, I'd say, has the downtown that a lot of other cities doesn't have, but it's just not a very thick, rich downtown. It has some positives, and I'll think you put in the comments, you might say, hey, Sam, Hampton downtown is great. And I understand there are some benefits to the Hampton downtown. There's some nice restaurants. There's some streets that have some good restaurants in them, but it's just not as heavy. It's not like downtown Norfolk. It's not like a full, vibrant downtown that you might be expecting if you think of what a downtown often is from where you're coming from. So it has some elements, but it's just not as heavy and thick as what you might find in other parts. It's an older part of town, an older city, so you've got a lot of 50s, 40s, 60s houses. But as you go further north and west, or north and east into this corner of the city, you'll find more rural, like Buckrow Beach is a great beach that it's also known for. It has on the eastern side of the city. Going further north from there, you'll also see lots of more rural areas. There are nice parks, but also a drawback will be flooding in these spots. On the northern side, check for flood insurance, because you might find there's some streets that might flood a lot more. It might be harder to get in and out of your neighborhood. So the further north you go, the more you may have to deal with that. But you're also close to Langley Air Force Base, which is right there. So if you need to be near the base, this is a good benefit. But you might find that if you want specific school districts that are more in demand, you might have to pivot to other parts. For example, the next city, which is Yorktown, which is actually a county, York County, north and south. And now Yorktown, or York County, this is just north and east of Hampton and Newport News. And so it goes along the top strip of the peninsula. This is on the other side of Langley Air Force Base, and it has a lot of houses like, a mixture of what you might find in Chesapeake, rural and also suburban. It has that, but a lot less of everything. So it's not a very highly developed part of town, but it has your essentials. And you're not going to be needing anything in York County, but you're not going to be loaded with nightlife. It's not a place where you go to party, but you're close to the base, Langley Air Force Base, and it has some of the top schools in the entire state, which is why people go after it. Tab, Grafton, York are three big ones. So that's a benefit to being in Yorktown. On the south side specifically, as you go further north, you've got history. Yorktown has a lot of history, even like the Yorktown battlefield, the Yorktown Beach, which is one of the most underrated or not even considered beaches in all of Hampton Roads, which has a real nice riverfront area where you can get a bite to eat on the water right across. As you look across the York River, you look across there, you see Gloucester, a very rural part of town across the water there, a nice bridge. It's a real nice setting, and it's small, but it has some nice restaurants in there. And it has, again, the history, the Yorktown battlefield, the American Revolution Museum, a lot of museums, a lot of history, a lot of stuff that happened in Yorktown, right in the town of Yorktown. And that's the area that splits between the South York County area and the North York County area. So going further north from there, in the North York County area, that's where you get into areas in Williamsburg. And so it gets even more historical there too. And that blends into the actual city of Williamsburg, where Williamsburg is the definition of history. You've got colonial Williamsburg. You've got Jamestown, which is further south from there, which we'll talk about in a minute. But Williamsburg itself, the city of Williamsburg, is only about 10, 15,000 people, but it has a reach beyond that into Yorktown, like North York County, and also into James City County, which is in the south and western parts of this area. So Williamsburg has a very relaxed feel. It has restaurants. It's got everything I think that someone might need. The issue that I think is the biggest debate between Williamsburg, if you want to live there or not, is that while it has lots of nature, has lots of friendly people, very relaxed vibe, golf courses, has all the elements to where a lot of people might want to retire, which is what happens a lot. The drawback is, though, that while it has like some good restaurants, especially in the central parts of Williamsburg, but it also doesn't have a ton of anything. And so like in Virginia Beach or in Chesapeake, you might feel like it's got a lot more stuff or a lot more accessibility to things. Like in downtown Norfolk, you feel like you've got everything at the tip of your fingers. But in Williamsburg, you've got the same things, but a lot less of everything. And so if you do run out of interest or spots to eat or spots like the grocery stores you're not a big fan of, or even, things to do, you might find that you need to drive further to do all those same things. And so that's one of the biggest drawbacks is you just kind of run out of those things unless you find specific things you like to do over and over again. And that kind of goes with the entire Yorktown, Williamsburg, and Jamestown area, which we'll talk about now, which is just south of Williamsburg, and it's right along the James River. And Jamestown's great. It has a small little beach, which is another little like nook and cranny like you wouldn't even notice is there. It has one of the more in-demand school districts in the area. But the drawback here is that while there are some newer houses in Jamestown, the prices in here like around the 4, 5, and 6 range. There just aren't a lot of houses in here. It's not a very big area, and so you might find you may have to move away from here because there's just aren't as many spots to choose from, and so you have to be really specific on which spots to hit when a house hits the market. Now in York County, the house prices can, especially in the south part, can be in the 5s, 6s, and up because of the demand of school district mostly. But now if you go into the northern side, you're going to get a mixture. You get anywhere from the 4s, 5s, and 6s. And again, as you get closer to the water, you get bigger estates, bigger properties, and just a larger mixture of types of houses. But for the most part, $400,000 to $600,000 price range will get you a lot of different types of houses in the York County area, as well as in the James City County area around Williamsburg. And also, Williamsburg has some very unique neighborhoods like Newtown, which is kind of like an all-inclusive condos, single-family houses, strip malls, restaurants, stores, all within walking distance in the very small spot, which has still like I mentioned in Ghent, in Norfolk, and also in Hilton. It's like a bigger version of Hilton, but a smaller version of Ghent, but it has a newer feel than what Ghent has. I don't think there are any other places in Hampton Roads that are similar to Newtown. So if you're like, hey Sam, I like this city, but I don't like this one. Well, I've done videos about all these cities in my channel, so you can click and check out my channel and see all the videos. And I go into detail talking about not just the city, but also neighborhood specific. But if you have any more questions, please reach out. If you plan to relocate here, also let me know. I love helping people relocate to the area. That's what I do. I love doing it. So just check out my email address. My contact information is in the description. You can all call me, reach out at any point, and I will do whatever I can to help you relocate to the area. And I will see you on the next video.